I'm so relieved that we can travel again and we can get out and about. The last 2 years have been brilliant, actually, from an advanced point of view. Even though we've had all of the challenges of COVID, God has been so faithful and kind to us in opening up opportunities that I wonder if we even would have got if COVID hadn't happened. So there is always, as we heard before from Dan, there's God can take the muck and the mess and turn it into something beautiful, and that's wonderful to remember. And we've seen God do brilliant things even through the difficult times of COVID, but I am relieved that we can start traveling again, because in some of the cultures and contexts that we work into around the world, particularly into Africa and certain parts of Asia, your relationships can only really go so far until you're able to fellowship together. And so you can build these relationships a little bit online, and we're thankful for that. But then you hit a ceiling. And really, you need to get on the ground. You need to fellowship. You need to eat together. That's very important in a lot of these contexts and cultures. Pray together. Go to each other's churches and communities. That's another big, important step. And as that happens, more and more and more fellowship grows, and more relationship, trust builds and things. And that's where we really see a lot of the good stuff going on that is happening. So it's been great to travel. You guys know that I went to Kenya in December and had a great time at the Proclaim Congress, and we saw 35 African nations, representatives from 35 African nations agree to the charter, and part of the charter for their evangelism network across Africa is to launch advanced groups into their nations. So we're so excited about that, and there's a number of new ambassadors that we've launched off the back of that, or in the process of launching right now. Brilliant. So my first trip of the year was to go to Ethiopia, and I just got back from there last week. And I had a little challenge getting there, to be honest. I can't remember what stage of the journey I shared with you about the visa situation, but when I got back from Kenya, it became clear to me that my passport was going to run out this summer, and then most places internationally you can't travel if you have less than 6 months on your passport. So I was like, man, I need to get a new passport. The only problem is I got multiple visas that I need to apply for trips that are coming up, and some of these visa applications you have to send your passport away. So juggling the timings of all of these different things was a bit of a problem. And I was looking at it all and working out what I was going to need to do, and I suddenly realized I was basically going to come up 4 days short of what I needed. I had 6 working days to get everything done, and I needed 10. And so I'm at the Indian embassy. Luis and I are going to India tomorrow, and we're just trying to sort the visa out for India. And I'm at the Indian embassy, and I'm talking to the guy, and I'm like, look, I really need this back in 6 working days. Like, I have to have this back because I'm supposed to be getting on an airplane. What's the deal here? And by the way, I'd already gone and had to faff around with getting my new passport in Liverpool, and I thought I'd be able to get it in a day, but because of COVID, they're not doing day passports anymore. You have to wait a week, so that had pushed everything back. So I'm at the Indian embassy later than I wanted to be, and it all just seems to be working against me, and I'm like, oh, this is frustrating. So I'm talking to the guy at the Indian embassy. He's like, no, sir, I'm sorry, it's 10 days. There's no way. I was like, I will pay you, like, whatever amount of money needs to be paid. Not a bung, not like a backhander. Like, just like, is there a system? Like, can I pay more to have it come back quicker? And he's like, no, sir. I was like, okay, well, what about a bung then? Like, is there anything I can do here to get this pushed through a little bit quicker? And he's like, no, sir, 10 days is all we can do. And I'm like, I got a choice here. I give you my passport, and there's every chance it doesn't come back and I can't get on the plane to Ethiopia, or I don't give you my passport and I definitely am not getting on that plane to India. And it's that little dilemma where you're like, oh, Lord, what should I do? I just thought the Lord say, then it's fine. Just give me your passport. It's absolutely fine. So I was like, all right, I'll give you my passport. And so that was that. Came back. Anyway, I was told it would take 10 days. It took 3 working days. Bang, back again. So happy days. Very good. Now that meant that I was able to go then and apply for my Ethiopian visa, and it was Christmas time and enjoying the time with my family down south, and I was like, right, I need to apply for my visa. Quickly hopped online, Googled Ethiopian visa. Oh, yeah, great, that's the site. Boom, boom, boom. Filled my visa out, sent it off, didn't think anything else about it. It said it would come back in 2 working days. A week goes by, and I'm like, I haven't had my visa back from Ethiopia. What's going on? So I went and checked up what was going on, trying to find out, what chasing it up, emailing them. They emailed me back. No, sir, it's still in the system. Don't worry, we'll get it to you. Nothing comes back a day later. This is 2 days before I'm supposed to fly. And I'm like, this is getting a little bit close for comfort here. So I emailed them back and said, I'm flying in 2 days. Like, what's the deal? And they, no, sir, don't worry about it. It's all good. So I called Abira, our ambassador in Ethiopia, and I said, Abira, got a problem with my visa. Is there anything you can do on your end? He said, no problem. I'll go to the immigration office, and I'll check if it's in the system, see if they can push it through. Great. Get a phone call from Abira 2 days before I'm going to fly. And he says to me, Ben, I got some bad news. I'm like, what? He's like, I've been down and it's not in the system. Can you send it to me now, your confirmation form? And I was like, yeah, I'll send it to you. So I send it. He's on the phone the whole time. I hear them talking, and he's like, I don't believe it. And I'm like, what? He's like, I've got some really, really bad news. I'm like, what? He's like, the site that you've used is a scam site. And I was like, oh. And you've got that double thing of like, one, oh my goodness, this is going to affect the trip. And also two, you feel so stupid. You feel so embarrassed because you're like, how have I got stung on this thing, right? So I'm like, oh, Abir, I'm so sorry. I Googled, and it was the first one that came up in Google. It looked so legit, as these scam sites do. And he's like, well, it's not an out-and-out scam site. It's not like they've literally just taken your money and it's game over. He's like, it's a scam site. They're a site that they take your money and then they do your visa on your behalf with the government. But the point is, you don't know when they're going to do it. They haven't even filed it yet. They might not do it. They might. It's like, who knows? The point is, you don't have a visa for Ethiopia. I was like, well, what can I do? He said, I don't think there's anything we can do. It takes 3 days. It takes 3 days to officially go through. I was like, well, what if I fill it out now, get it in the system, and maybe you go back in the morning and try? He said, yeah, let's try that. I was like, okay. So I did that. Next morning, he calls me up at 6 a.m., 9 a.m. Ethiopian time. He says, I'm here at the visa office right now. Can you just confirm the number that you got when you put your submission through? I confirmed that with him. He said, I'll call you back in about 15 minutes. 1 minute later, I get a phone call back. He says, I'm in the office of the head of the immigration office, and your visa's been approved. And let me tell you what happens. He went to the front desk, and the front desk, he said, this is what's happened. This is the whole situation. My friend in the UK, is there anything you can do? And they said, no, we can't do anything. No, there's nothing we can do about that. I'm sorry, you just have to wait as long as it takes. And he said, well, please, is there like a senior person in this office that I could at least talk to? And they said, you can talk to him, but he'll say the same thing that I've said. And Abira said, well, let me give it a go. So Abira walked into this guy's office. And as Abira walked into this guy's office, the guy stood up and he said, Abira. And Abira looked at him. He says, you know me? He says, yes, I know you. He says, I watch your TV channel, El Shaddai TV, all the time. And because Abira owns a Christian TV channel in Ethiopia. And this guy's a believer, watches Abira's TV channel. He says, what do you need? He says, I got a brother coming to do an evangelism conference. Bang, done. So be encouraged. Even someone as stupid as me filling out a scam form online cannot thwart the plans of the Lord, right? He knows what he's doing. The Lord knew what he was doing. Let's throw the pictures up onto the screen. And it was important that I was there. This was the evangelism conference that I went to speak at. And this was organized by us at Advance and El Shaddai TV and a church denomination in Ethiopia that has about 1,700 churches in it. And they reached around their churches and said, please send us your out-and-out evangelists. We had over 200 evangelists come to Addis, and I was able to do a whole bunch of teaching for them throughout the day. And then the most precious thing was at the end of the day, we did a 30-minute commissioning service, which went off. They're a Pentecostal denomination, preached the gospel. Didn't preach the gospel. We kind of preached the gospel as a way of commissioning them. And we had a great prayer time together. It was beautiful. And every single one of these evangelists received their Amharic translation of the guide, and they're all now going away to think about how they're going to start their own groups. So we think off the back of this, we'll get at least 100 advanced groups that will be launched. But not only that, the superintendent of the denomination was there, quite a young guy actually, and we really hit it off, had a great time together. And he said, Ben, I love this. I feel like this is what we need in our denomination. He's like, I'm going to make sure that we employ a national coordinator for this across Ethiopia, and we are going to launch advanced groups in every single one of our 1,700 churches across Ethiopia. Isn't that amazing? So good. So we're very excited about that. Then next slide, please. These were the guides that we gave out to everybody. Next slide. Then we went out into the countryside. We started praying and prophesying over some of the northern region. I don't know if you know, but Ethiopia is in a war at the moment. In the north, the former government has got voted out basically and is entrenched into the northern part of the country, and now them and a bunch of rebels are trying to kind of push down into the south and basically usurp the government. They got pretty close at one point. It got very hairy in Ethiopia a few months ago, just before Christmas, but the government managed to push them back, and they're kind of back up into the north now. But you might even have seen while I was away in the news, there was some bombing that took place in some refugee camps, and it's always the poor and it's always the refugees and people that struggle and get hurt hurt the most in these wars. And just these forces going into towns and cities and just destroying hospitals and schools for no reason. Just going in and doing it. It's like, it's just madness. It's insanity. It's always crazy. So we went up into the north. We were about 40 kilometers south of where the fighting was taking place. They asked me how far north I wanted to go. I said, how far do the missiles travel? They said about 20 kilometers. I said, 40 sounds good. So we went about 40 kilometers south of the fighting, and we went out praying in you can see the city in the background, but we went out into the countryside. And while we were there, we saw this donkey. And this is one of those donkeys, you've seen these donkeys that has the cross on its back. And of course, there's that kind of myth about the idea that this was the same kind of donkey that took Jesus into Jerusalem with the cross across its back. We don't know for sure if that's definitely what happened. But as we were praying, I said, oh, look, it's one of those donkeys that supposedly took Jesus into Jerusalem. And all 4 of the guys that I was with, all from this area, all looked and they all went, we have never seen one of those donkeys here before. Like, literally, I've never seen that kind of donkey before with the cross on its back. And so we were like, hey, maybe it's just a little kindness from the Lord to say that, something new is riding in. There's a victory coming. We're going to ride in. We're going to take this land that is so battered by violence and war, and the Orthodox Church has got such a stranglehold over that. And, I don't want to be down on those guys, but the truth is a lot of what they preach and a lot of what they teach is not gospel, and it's not Christian ultimately. And so we need to see a spread of the true gospel come across that land. And that was very encouraging for us the time that we had there. Next slide. Then we were able to do a gathering for 70 evangelists in the north. And with those 70 evangelists, not only did we teach and encourage them, but we also were able to bless them with a month's wages each to help them with their evangelism. So that was really, really encouraging. Next slide, please. And then we were actually able to impact some of those that had been affected by the war-torn area. We gathered about 50 families who've been affected by the war. They've lost their husbands to fighting. Some soldiers as well who've been hurt in the fighting. We were able to give them enough food for 2 months each household. So this was all part of the trip. Next slide, please. These were the families that started to gather so that we were able to feed them. And what I loved about this trip, what I loved about it was that, yes, we were seeing advanced groups flourish across Ethiopia, and more people get committed to proclaiming the gospel in word. But crucially also, we were modeling what it looks like for the deed side of things, that we shouldn't be divorcing those things. And in partnership with El Shaddai, we were actually able to bless the local community and support the local evangelists into doing what they were doing. We were able to talk and pray with a guy, a soldier who's got 2 bullets in his leg, got shot 2 months ago, still got the bullets in his leg, and to pray with him and to bless him and to feed him and to encourage him, and then to connect an evangelist who lives in the same town that he lives and say, you guys need to stay connected and in relationship together, and to keep growing and journeying and journeying and journeying so that we become holistic evangelists that don't just proclaim the word but live it out and actually take care of people, their practical need that opens their heart for the ultimate spiritual needs. So it was such a blessing and such an incredible time. Like I say, Luis and I are going to be heading off to India tomorrow. We're going to be launching officially, because we've had advanced bubbling away in India for the last couple of years through Gary's connections with Prasad in Andhra Pradesh and some other areas as well into the north. And we've had little pockets of advance, which is brilliant. But every new area that you go into India is like a new country. So you have to start from scratch, really. So we're going to Hyderabad and Chennai, and we're going to launch advance there. And we're very hopeful about what we can see across that international region. But over the coming months, we have all sorts of trips coming up. And again, so thankful that we're able to get out and about. Just one trip, because there's many, but one trip that let me tell you very quickly. At the end of February, we're going to Russia. And the reason why I'm particularly excited about the time that we're going to spend in Russia is when we launched Advance and when it began to build a bit of international momentum, we had a number of prophetic words about Russia, and that Russia was going to be a land that we saw real fruitfulness in, and was going to be a land where God opened doors, and from that land other things would happen. And Russia is a gateway into Asia as well, just because of the landmass and where it sits, straddling Asia and Europe as well. So very, very excited about what could happen in Russia. Small beginnings. We're just going to Moscow. We're just going to Moscow, aren't we? Yeah, just going to Moscow. And obviously it's a big, big, big country, Russia. But these little beginnings and some of the contacts we have, we really believe that some incredible fruitfulness can come. So good to have the global gathering the other day. We had about 40 nations represented on that, 59 of our workers and ambassadors and stuff. That's by invitation only. We invite people to come on just to encourage them. And again, every time we do that, it's just a fresh encouragement for us that, yes, these people are real people that we're journeying with, that are seeing fruitfulness, and hearing the stories coming back from Thailand and stories coming back from Canada and stories from Sierra Leone and Uganda and right across Europe, all over the place. Just Brazil, incredible stuff that's going on. And the final thing to say is just do pray for us as we build to Global Advanced Day, which is the last Saturday of this month, the 29th of January, where we will be launching 1,000 new groups on that day around the world. And our hope is to launch into at least 5 new nations on that day as well. And if you want to keep up to date with what's going on with Advance and all the fruitfulness that's coming out, because I give you a lot of stats, what you really want is stories. The best way to find the stories is go to the website, advancegroups.org. This year we're having a year of stories where every single day we are launching a new story. You get it on our social media, but they're all listed on our website. A story from the movement for every single day of this year, just to see what God's doing through it and how he's blessing it. Let's pray.